Hi, friends. Welcome to Getting Your Real Estate Life Together. I'm Tracy Hicks with All Things Real Estate. And today, I know I say this every time, but I am really excited to have Karl and Kevin from Streamlined Media. Welcome, guys.
Tracy, thank you so much for having us. This has been something we've been really looking forward to for like the last week or so, ever since we decided we wanted to do this. So
Yeah,
we're ready to have some fun with you.
totally.
Super excited.
Right on. Okay, so I'm just going to jump in. I want to hear about each one of your backgrounds. We definitely, obviously, have to talk about Streamlined Media, and then we want to talk about Podboxx because that's really where all of this is going to lead to. So realtors, hang in there because I tell everybody all the time they need a podcast.
Yeah.
And it's
do.
so easy. Just do it. And I know I had a hard time organizing it and getting it together in my head. Like, how is this going to work? What am I going to talk about? And all that good stuff. But then the mechanicals, how do you do it? Microphones and all that stuff. And you guys have created a really cool product that I'm excited to share and make every realtor purchase. I should just have them and then like make them buy them from the store or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Can we like set up a deal with you where like we just ship you a ton and you just put it like, front display or whatever?
I'll just sell Podboxes.
Could be a new cash flow generating revenue stream there.
I know, right? I am a realtor. I should be thinking along those lines. Okay, so Karl, your background is really cool. Well, I know as far as your podcast, your Dear Black CEO podcast, but tell us kind of a little bit prior to that, why you got to that point and kind of, we're all entrepreneurs at heart and not everybody can do it. And so tell us kind of your story prior and then talk to us about Dear Black CEO.
Yeah. So my story probably started somewhere around 2015. At that point in time, I didn't even know what a podcast was. I really didn't. I was a sales guy for a startup medical device company. So talk about being like a pseudo entrepreneur, working for a business. That was kind of my life. I had a huge area that spanned the southeast of the country. And so I would just drive thousands of miles a week, calling on physicians that diagnose lung cancer. And I'm a big hip hop fan. So, I'd be driving from Atlanta where I live to like Birmingham, Alabama, for instance, and I would just be bumping the same hip hop track. And finally, something just kind of came to mind where I was like, you know what, I should probably use this time. Tony Robbins talks about net time. I should probably use this time to try to like get better at sales or learn something useful.
Right.
And that's when I finally like scrolled through like my little iPhone and I saw the little purple icon. It said podcast. And I'm like, oh, you mean like these are free to listen to? And found some amazing podcasts, a lot of them being in the personal development space that just really helped me with my sales game and took it to a level where literally, on those long drives, that's all I was doing. I was just educating myself because I was a young guy. I'd been given this awesome opportunity with this company to knock it out of the park. And I always had that imposter syndrome kind of feeling like I, wasn't really capable to go out and just do well. So I was just so gung-ho about just taking in all the information that I could to improve myself. And it really, translated itself very nicely to my career. I got tons of awesome promotions, moved to Nashville, then on to Denver, took on a team of my own. And we just helped sell that company for 9 figures, actually, believe it or not.
All because of a podcast you listen to.
Well, yeah, literally. I literally became like one of the top sales guys, and I attribute it to like me just being very intentional about trying to raise my value to the organization. You see what I'm saying? So that was the incredible thing about the whole podcasting journey for myself. And it took me helping this company to the 9-figure mark where I realized that if I didn't find a way to end up in the owner's chair or in the C-suite myself, that I was just busy making somebody else's dreams come to fruition, right? I was just busy making somebody else rich. I had some good equity in the company and I did all right, but I know what some of the people above me did.
We're doing.
And I was like, damn. So all these years I was just getting pats. Yeah, I was like, shit, okay, all these years I'm making President's Club over and over and I'm getting pats on the back and they're like, nice job, keep it up. Like, you guys see what you're doing.
Making
you're
us money. Me up.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
They knew what they were doing.
Exactly. They 100% knew what they were doing. So I had become, sort of aware to that. And I was like, all right, I really got to figure out what's next because I don't want to be an employee forever. If you look like me and I'm African-American, it's definitely possible to end up in the C-suite to own a company or to run a company in corporate America. But we're very far and few in between. We just are. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think successful CEO, what comes to mind? It's probably the image of,
An
a
old
white
white guy.
male, in like a conservative black suit, right? So
Yeah.
Dear Black CEO, the podcast, has really come about as a result of my vision to create a framework and a platform that can help successful Black professionals in corporate successfully exit and create businesses that are sustainable on their own, leveraging their unique gifts. And one of the gifts that I've always had is my ability to communicate and like transmit energy, which is why I chose to start a podcast. So that's how I got to this side of the microphone,
Right.
truthfully. Yeah.
Okay, I want a couple things. You said that's where kind of the energy, I feel like that is something that podcasting can give to people, is that energy. Like we were talking before, I try not to talk too much before the podcast. I'm like, save that
Yeah.
for the podcast. But with social media, it's photos and people don't hear your voice and how you emphasize, like what you get
Yeah.
excited about and that kind of stuff. And I think that's what podcasting can give to your business and to your marketing, is that excitement and that personality and all that good stuff. So
100%. I mean, one of the things that came a little bit later in my journey was investing in real estate. It's something that I do, on the side from more of a passive standpoint.
yeah.
But I got there because I was meeting all these people when I lived in Nashville. They were all doing fairly well. And the commonality was real estate. So I was like, all right, where can I learn about this? Ta-da,
Yeah.
podcasts. Found some
Right.
awesome podcasts that were disseminating that information. And,
Yep.
the guy that I now do deals with, I do deals with him now because of his podcast. He just gave me so much great content over and over and over. And then we networked, and it just kind of became, this natural evolution of, wow, now we're doing deals hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that really is the power. Again, not to hit the whole you should have a podcast thing over the head to death, but that is the power behind it. People can hear your voice to the point where they feel like they've got an intimate relationship with you, right?
Yeah.
And then you're exposing them to all this incredible information that's improving the trajectory of their lives. I mean,
Yep.
at some point in time, they're going to be like, I want to do business with you. I want to know you further. So
Yeah. And I think too that, back in the day, like people didn't give their secrets away for businesses. Like corporations were like, they didn't want anybody to get their secret and do what they're doing. And I think because obviously with the internet and Googles and all that YouTube, anybody can do it. And so they've pivoted and realized that they have to be the ones to give that information. Otherwise they're going to get it somewhere else and maybe never gain your business. So that's super cool. Okay, Kevin, you started as a young child.
I did.
As an entrepreneur, and then ended as a loan officer now in this podcasting gig. So I want to hear about your kind of journey and how you got to. Also, too, I really love the connection between loan officer and podcast, because loan officers are like marketing beasts. Like they just market, but they tend to
go over the top, right?
Yeah, and maybe not and they're marketing to realtors and, obviously buyers and people that need loans and all that good stuff. But realtors is a big part of your business, obviously, and that's who you want to market to. But so tell us how you got started and your entrepreneurial path.
Yeah, so it's been a long one in a really short amount of time. That's
because you're only 18 right now, right?
Right? I wish. So yeah, basically growing up my whole life, I was always in that entrepreneurial mindset, but not from the perspective of like I listened to Tony Robbins or read these self-improvement books growing up. It was my dad was always essentially hustling, always doing something, flipping cars. He had a body shop, but he was also a pastor. And
That's awesome.
He's been like that, his whole life. I saw that, and growing up, anytime I wanted something, it was figure out a way to get it, right?
Yeah.
So I can remember one of the first ways I ever did that is there was a set of child craft books that I had growing up. I was like, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, something like this. And in that book, it showed you how to use paper to make like an origami basket.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, cool. So I make an origami basket, and then I make another one and another one and another one. All of a sudden, I've got like 50 origami baskets, and I'm like, what am I going to do with these?
With all these baskets.
So I take it to the biggest marketplace I knew of at the time, which was my dad's church that he pastored, and went up and down the road selling those baskets for 50, 75 cents a pop.
As a cute kid.
Right.
I
And
mean, come
so,
on.
Nobody say no to that.
We know the outcome, right?
yeah. So I got my money, got my toy or candy, whatever it was I was looking for. And, that was kind of the starting point of where I realized, hey, if you want something, you can go get it. You just got to create the opportunity. Right.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, I tried a little bit of everything. Growing up, I had my first full-time job when I was 14 doing small engine repair. Then I got into the bodywork industry following my dad's footsteps. Then I realized that manual labor was not for me. So then I moved out to California and I went on a tour speaking to schools across the country with a company called Camfell Productions. Basically, we just encourage students to do their best, stay away from drugs, all of that good stuff. It was a really fun experience, right? The same old story they've been hearing for years and years,
right?
But it was a really fun experience. It kind of opened my mind to what was really out there, and so I ended up moving back to Mississippi for a girl that didn't work out. And so then I decided, you know what?
The relationship, not that she didn't work out.
Right, exactly. And then, so I decided to go back into manual labor. I worked for about 1.5 years, 2 years as an industrial electrician. And then one day I was presented with the opportunity of a lifetime to sell vacuum cleaners door to door. And I was like, you know what? This is it. This is how I'm making my $1 million.
This is going to be it.
So
and really, you just didn't want to do manual labor anymore because you had forgotten that was not your jam.
Exactly. You're catching on here. So I quit my job, right? And I was newly married, by the way. I had gotten married like a week before this. I quit my job. My wife was a daycare teacher at the time. And I started selling vacuum cleaners full time. And it was a network marketing, direct sales hybrid company.
What year was this?
This would have been 2015 or no, 2016.
Seriously?
2016. Yeah.
So
we're talking 5 years ago.
Oh my gosh. And they were still selling vacuum cleaners.
Oh yeah. It's still a big thing right now.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knew?
Huge company.
Nobody calls on me.
Huge company.
Sorry, I have a Roomba, so it just that is fascinating.
So I started selling these vacuum cleaners door to door. We're selling them for $3,000 a piece, by the way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a high ticket vacuum. And it was, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of hard points and struggles throughout that journey, but I did it for about 2 years. We grew it up to a team of about 20 direct sales people.
Right. Yeah.
Done about $1 million in annual direct sales of vacuum cleaners door to door.
That's crazy.
It's a really, really fun experience. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be honest, it was a little difficult sleeping at night selling $3,000 vacuum cleaners to people that couldn't afford $3,000 vacuum cleaners.
Right.
So at that point, it was kind of a moral thing internally. And I was like, you know what? We've got to find a change. And at this point, my wife had quit her job as a daycare teacher and she was selling vacuum cleaners as well.
No.
We were all in on this.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So we say, you know what? Enough's enough. A few other things transpired, but eventually, moral of the story is we sold everything that we had. We packed up our whole house into our Escape. And we moved across the country to Arizona.
Wow.
To Scottsdale. And we got our licenses as loan officers, and we got hired on to a company called Crest Mortgage, and that's where I've been ever since. Fantastic company. And along that journey, obviously, I've, if you're familiar with, obviously you're a realtor, right? This is all things real estate.
Yeah.
Real estate is a networking game, right?
It is. Yeah.
At its core, although there's a bunch of fancy ways to get more business through social media and ads and all that good stuff. At the end of the day, it's still a networking game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that's really what drew me to podcasting. And although, yes, it's fantastic that there's evergreen content out there that, you know, your client can constantly listen to and so on and so forth. The big win for me with podcasting has been it's allowed me to be in conversations with people that I never should have had a reason to have a conversation with.
Yep.
Right. And so that was the big winner for me. And I actually started a podcast at the end of 2019 called Screw the Side Hustle, basically about entrepreneurs that are going all in. Right.
You were well suited for that one.
Right. And honestly, though, I kind of hit a brick wall with the production side of things. It was really hard running, you know, my mortgage business along with I still have my hands in several other things.
Yeah.
To grow this podcast. And then I had to manage these VAs in order to get all these different things done that you need to get done to make your podcast sound right.
Right.
And that was the beginning of Streamlined Podcast. And the rest is history, as they say.
That is so cool. And there's one thing that's consistent in an entrepreneur is the story, no matter how far back, whether it was a year ago or since you were a kid or whatever, how people get to where their podcast is all really similar, right? There's a reason why, like, your podcast was obviously with your experiences as trying to figure out what the hell I want to be when I grow up kind of thing. And
Right.
Karl, you know, with you having that passion of wanting to see other Black CEOs, you know, be successful in whatever capacity you can do that in. And so it's like podcasting made the most sense for us. We just wanted another avenue. You know, we sell real estate products. So people are like, well, I think back in the day, they would have been like, why do you have a podcast? Now it's obviously a lot more people have them, and it's not as weirdly looked at, like, why would I do that? But at the same time, in the real estate space, I think that a lot of the podcasts, not to knock anyone, but there's a lot of really shitty podcasts out there. And real estate is really personality based. And I know there's someone for everyone and something for everyone, but I think that is exactly why you should have a podcast. Because I think that's always the first question. When I tell a realtor they should have a podcast, they're like, well, why would I do that? And I think that being able to do this, make connections, the networking, exactly what you were saying, but also having all of your information that's in your brain as a realtor. And this was a big reason why we did it too, is I have all these ideas for realtors to boost their business and be successful and all that good stuff. And it's a place that I can store them all. You know, I'm like, go to podcast episode with so-and-so, we talked about this. And then they go and then they listen, they keep, you know, and then they learn other stuff that they didn't really anticipate. So I have a couple questions for both of you before we move on to Streamline. Karl, you talked about the vision of having more Black CEOs heard and just exposure. So how is your podcast set up? Like, how does it work? I'll be honest, I didn't know about it until you filled out the form for today's podcast. And I got to learn, you know, about you guys, but I'll definitely be listening now. But tell us a little bit how you structured it and kind of your decision for that.
Yeah. So it's actually my second podcast. Way back when, probably like late 2019, early 2020, I launched a show called the Free Time Podcast that I grew to, like, I don't know, 70 episodes or so. And then just chose to make a strategic pivot to Dear Black CEO, which is actually launching on my 30th birthday coming up in 2 weeks, March 16th.
Oh, nice.
So the way it's structured, I'm so excited about it, is I've essentially networked with a ton of influential people of color, right, that are running businesses of their own. One guy that I just had on the other day was Keenan Beasley. Keenan Beasley was like the former VP of L'Oreal, like shampoo products. And
oh, wow.
He was super high up for like Tide and Procter and Gamble. And a few years ago, he stepped away to start this thing out called Venture Noir, which is like a kind of like a venture capital company, if you will, for minority-owned businesses. And so I have these folks that have successfully pivoted or transitioned away from a corporate job into doing their own thing. Yep. We have them on, and we use it as an opportunity to celebrate their success, but also learn from them. You know, what were some of the difficult moments with pivoting away, right? And having to deal with going at it all on your own. So I think one of the things that keeps a lot of us stuck is that sort of doubt in our mind relative to whether or not we have what it takes to make it. Like we all know what it takes to kind of be a successful employee, skirt under the radar and collect that paycheck, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes time to like literally have to go out there and prove that you can sustain your lifestyle, take care of your loved ones, and do things on your own, that's a whole nother ball game. And so I'm really bringing these folks on, not just to inspire the audience, but to provide some tactics about how difficult this entrepreneurship road is.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, it's a difficult one. And I think on social, you see photos of entrepreneurs on the beach. I'm in Tulum, I'm chilling with all these honeys. And okay, like maybe that's one aspect of it. But like, even if you are a person doing that, I'll bet you got your nuts kicked in a bunch to get there. And I feel like if we can be more transparent with folks about that process, well, at least we're setting them up with better expectations to come in and hopefully sustain the journey to get to the good life, like what we see on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, totally. I'm that same, like with all things real. At first it was a newspaper. And so there's a little bit of a blurred line there because I knew that I always wanted a real estate store. But when I first got my license, or a few years later, the market tanked, and this was in 2007. And I was like, oh shit, I need a side hustle. And so we had a for sale by owner newspaper that actually went out of business or something. And my auntie was like, yeah, you should do something like that. And I was like, oh, I could, like, realtors need a place to market their open houses and their listings and talk about themselves. And I think real estate, unless you are going to buy a house, have been through the process or selling, you just don't think, you know nothing about it. It's like, it's the same as a surgery. You wouldn't know how to operate on someone. It's the same as buying and selling houses. You don't know how the process is going to work. And so, you know, as a buyer, I wanted to normalize real estate a little bit more and get all that information out there and show people that it is attainable and it's not just for rich people or whatever. So started the newspaper, but we had to buy a new iPad yesterday and it let me do the engraving on the back. And I was like, oh, I'm putting all things real estate and I'm going to do the established date. And I was like, I think it was 2014. And then I really went back and looked at our first sale. It was 2012. And I was like, you mean I've been telling myself, oh, it's been, you know, we've been around 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, oh, it's been like 8. So it's that there is no overnight success. It feels like it sometimes because you finally, all that hard work pays off at some point, which is why we're entrepreneurs, because you're chasing that high. Yeah. But I think that, you're totally right. You still need all that information, all the people that you're talking to on your podcast and getting that stuff. You need that stuff to get you that, because you could still just go and just do what you're doing and never get that beach life or whatever. But I think that's a journey of all of ours that we want to get to that point, but you're right. It's not overnight.
Yeah. And the really cool thing about it too, is like having the opportunity to kind of document the process.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're new to real estate, like think about how cool it would have been back in 2012 to have had a podcast.
Right.
Podcasts, I think, kind of first came on the scene 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. Even to this day, you know, even though they've been around for quite some time, they're still very much in their infancy. Yeah. But it's a really cool way to sort of, you know, watch the evolution of your business and see the types of content that you're putting out there, how it's growing, how it's helping people, and you know, ultimately be able to look back upon that. So I think that's a nice, you know, little caveat to podcasting that a lot of people oftentimes don't consider.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I was not a podcast listener before. I mean, I'm really still not. I do just to kind of hear what other people are doing. And if our guests have a podcast, they definitely, you know, do that kind of stuff. But that doesn't stop me from doing a podcast, because everybody learns differently. That's why in school there should be like a reading way, a video way, or listening, just like audiobooks or whatever, you know, not everything works for everyone. So I think podcasting is a great way to reach that podcast group that you wouldn't have before. Okay, so Kevin, are you still doing that podcast, or do you have one for mortgage?
I am not, and I don't.
I love it.
With that being said, there is another podcast on the way this year. It's just, to be honest with you, we've been in the middle of growing Streamlined, and it's taken
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
I feel like if I take the time away from that to put a podcast out there right now, I would be doing a disservice.
Yeah.
But I can't wait until I have that opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Is there a Streamlined podcast?
There
Yeah.
is.
Okay, good. I was like, I don't want to mention it if there isn't, but if there isn't, there should be.
Yeah, there is. It's called Pod Genies.
Okay, I should probably listen to that.
Yeah, and basically the whole premise is just for us to share, obviously, the things we've learned along the journey.
Yeah.
You know, the things we've learned with working with countless podcasters to
Mhm.
help you be more successful in your podcasting journey.
Totally. Yeah, because every journey is a little bit different.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And that's kind of how like Kevin and I met, as well as our other two business partners that aren't on the call, Rob and Hans. We all met because we were all aspiring podcasters and we were trying to knock it out of the park. So what do you do when you're trying to knock it out of the park? You go spend a shit ton of cash on a
Yep.
high ticket mastermind
Right.
to learn and network with people that are doing the thing that you want to do. And yeah, I mean, honestly, if it weren't for the podcast, I wouldn't have Kevin as a friend. I wouldn't have my other two partners as dear friends. So that's just kind of like, you know, a personal one for me that really hits to the heart. Is it's really given me the ability to kind of extend my reach and find people in different parts of the country that I now call some of my best friends, you know, my business partners. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't get in the game and behind the mic, you know?
That's dope. Yeah. And I think too that when you pay for stuff like that, you're like, you know, obviously, what am I going to get out of this? And you want takeaways,
Yeah.
something like that, having, you know, building a relationship with people that are like-minded and are on the same trajectory as you, and you can feed off of each other and get ideas, and having that camaraderie is so important. It really is. You have to have somebody that you can talk to that understands what you're going through. I mean, realtors of all people know that. Like,
Yeah.
it's a stressful job. Okay, so Streamlined. Let's talk about that. We became a customer a few months ago. I think it's about 3 months now. And we've been nothing but happy and thrilled. And we built relationship with people that, you know, we get to talk to you guys who started this business. And so for me, that's just another thing where you're working with vendors, and to be able to have those relationships and do cool things like this is really, you know, it's just icing on the cake. So tell us about Streamlined. I know how we got there. What is it?
Yeah. So I wish I could take the credit for the idea or the inception of Streamline. That was really my genius friend here, Kevin. I'll never forget leaving the mastermind that I just referenced, and I was at a coffee shop and he was calling me, right? Because we were both trying to like grow our podcast. We're trying to figure out like ways to be more efficient with it. And he was working me through all these different ideas. Like, what if we could like create a team that could handle the post-production? Because the thing that they don't tell you about podcasting is it is a ton of work in order to do it in like a professional and intentional way. Like,
Yeah.
I think my idea at first was, all right, just talk to the mic and it somehow goes all the places that people
Yep.
go to listen to
Magically.
podcasts. Yeah. And it's not that. So I was having challenges, he was having challenges, and talk about our entrepreneur journey. You know, Kevin kind of put it together to a place where he's like, hey, if we could find a way to offer a very quality service, right, at a very decent cost or price point,
Yeah.
we could probably help a lot of people that are out there just like us, probably struggling with the same thing. Because for me, at least, you know, I got this medical device business, I got my other things going on. I couldn't really make sense of paying like $1,200 a month for podcast production, especially when the podcast was in its infancy. Nobody knew me online, and
Right.
it wasn't generating any money. Like it just wasn't. And
Yeah.
if you look out at a lot of the competitors that do what we do from a post-production standpoint for podcasts, they're all north of $1,000. So you
Right.
wonder why a bunch of new podcasters coming into the space, they're all excited, I got a podcast. And then 5 episodes later, you don't hear from them again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we became really passionate about figuring out a way that we could really streamline the process, but also offer it at a very quality and cost-effective price point. And I'll have Kevin talk a little bit more about the services that we offer, because that's a lot of what he dreamed up in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and really that whole initial dream was to be able to record and then forget about it.
Yes.
And that's essentially been our mission from day one. I mean, obviously, we're a startup. There's been times where we've messed up. Duh, that's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yep.
But that is our number one thing that we're always shooting for. And so, with that being said, our deliverables are engineered to provide that result, meaning you upload to our website your raw audio files, and then our team's going to take the time to listen through all of those audio files. We've actually got human beings doing this, by the way. It's not just AI software or whatever.
Does that exist?
It does.
Yeah.
And
Oh my gosh, no way.
I know personally of several podcast production companies that are relatively established that are charging ridiculous amounts of money and are using that software.
It's a robot.
That is
And
so
it's just
weird.
a robot, right?
Yeah.
And so,
I don't like that.
that's how things that are very simple get missed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we've got actual human beings that are listening. So when you say, hey, cut that out or X, Y, and Z, someone's listening there to catch that. We've got a team that listens through and writes detailed show notes that are time stamped. We pull out all of the relevant resources and links. We also provide a pretty simple graphics that you can share on your social media just to push some promotion towards that episode. And then what I really like is the fact that we publish all of that stuff for you, other than the social media. Obviously, we just send that to you.
Yeah.
But, so that really does give you that feeling of, hey, I just get to record and then forget about it. And we've got several things on the horizon that we've been working on since the beginning of this company that's going to help us push towards that dream even further, help provide more insight to our clients about where episodes are at in production, things like that. And so we're really, really excited about the future of the company and about what we've been able to do so far.
Yeah. And with the amount of stuff that you guys are doing right now as a startup, just imagine what kinds of things are going to come out in the next, year or two or whatever, of extra things that are going to be available to people. And I feel like, we're not early adopters, but I feel like we get to be a part of that process and get to learn these things as it's going along and at a pace that works for us, because I don't want to go from, we're probably, if I were like from A to Z, we're probably somewhere around H, and I don't want to be, at like, S, like jumping that far ahead. For me, I need to have a handle on things somewhat. And so gradually getting there and getting that structure for us down, and we feel really good about it. And it's really kind of funny because it didn't take a whole lot of work. Like, the thing about the podcast is it just naturally goes the way that you operate, because you're operating it. It's your gig. And so it's going to go at the pace that you want it to go. The only thing that I have to say that, when I have the podcast, like, okay, I have this podcast coming up next week or this week or tomorrow or whatever. And so I always, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh, I have this thing to do. And then you do it and you have so much fun doing it and you're glad. And that's why you keep going. So
yeah,
I know that, Karl, you've talked about the podcast graveyard before. And so where they go to die. And I feel like if I didn't have the support of your team, at some point I can see this petering out for us or something. But because you guys make it so easy, it's like, okay, there's no reason why I can't do this.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Tracy. I feel like so many people start the podcast because they enjoy the conversation, even if there is a little bit of dread leading up to it as you're prepping or getting the whole setup just right. Once you're in the conversation, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Nobody gets into it to learn how to be a sound engineer or to, be good at SEO, show note writing, or Canva for graphics or anything like that. Right. So we're like, hey, how do we keep it as fun as possible so that podcasters can just podcast?
Yeah.
And if they can just focus on that and the content's coming from here and from here, like they're going to have the longevity that's ultimately going to help them do more business, do more deals, especially if you're in the real estate space. So
yeah. And I have to say, we have most of our podcast guests are realtors, but we also obviously want to talk to people that can also help realtors with whatever business they have, whether it be social media help or podcasting, things like that. I get something out of every podcast. Literally, I'll get an idea, I'll get inspired about something, I'll learn something that I didn't know that will help me in my business, especially obviously talking to realtors. If they're like, oh, we don't do that anymore, I'm like, what? Or, stuff that will pertain to my business. And so before we talk about a couple other things that we have that we want to talk about, I want to say I'm always telling realtors why they should have a podcast. So let me just put this in here right now, that realtors, because they're thinking, okay, what would I talk about? What would I do with it? And I want to get a little bit of insight from the people that you guys are working with, that are podcasting with you guys. But a realtor can start a podcast just literally talking about the business, what it takes to buy a house. Okay, here's first steps. Your podcast could be 20 minutes. It could be an hour. We do podcast bites or mini bites, BYTES. See what we did there? So we do little mini, like quick little, oh, we had an idea for a realtor. And so we do these little 5-minute ones in between our regular podcast. So we do 2 of each. So something comes out every week. But for realtors, there's so many things they can do. And also too, let me just say that what your intention for the podcast was in the beginning, it may evolve, it may change, it might be something, might turn into something different, but go with it. Like, don't be afraid, because that's what you want is, people are like, oh man, you go back and look at your first one. You're like, but that's the growth part. Like, that's the good part that you get to see, like how far you've come. But so anyway, so yeah, you could talk about home. I mean, there's so many things they can talk about. I don't have to give them topics, but just kind of a structure on what they can do, and you can mix it up. But the one thing that I really would love to see realtors doing for their business is talking to their team. And when I say team, I mean your lender, your home inspector, your plumber, your go-to, decking contractor, dryer, whatever. Those are the people that you need to have on there. Maybe you have a local coffee shop that you go in and get your coffee every morning from. They're a part of your team. If you're going to a home inspection, you're going to bring coffee for everyone, you're going to that coffee shop. And so having them on the podcast even and talking about their business, and it doesn't have to always be about real estate. Obviously, we're talking about entrepreneurialism and that kind of stuff. There is a common thread and a common denominator in all of your relationships as a realtor. And so those are the people that you have on your podcast. And then, of course, they're going to share that out. So if they're sharing it out, if they're a coffee shop and they're sharing it out, somebody that really loves that coffee shop too and was thinking about buying a house in 6 months, bam, there you go. Like, that's what it's about.
Dude.
So there's my my lecture.
I get so excited. I get so excited about all of that, especially for realtors or people in real estate, because it's such a people-based business.
Yeah.
Like, you're building relationships, and relationships are built on trust and people liking you. And so if I'm new to Portland and I've only been to Portland once and I have no idea like what the cool coffee shop is or what the best school district is, and I find out that there's a realtor that's got a podcast and she's just talking to local business owners or interviewing superintendents, like all of a sudden I'm like, all right, like I'm getting the itch scratch in terms of like knowing where all the things are in Portland.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing your voice, right? So it's so intimate, like you're in my ear. So I'm starting to feel like I know you. And, if you do it the right way, you put in a cool call to action, a way that I can get in touch with you, odds are pretty high that I'm going to reach out and we can get into some sort of work relationship. There's a lot more effectiveness than just a cold email campaign, right? Or a business card or whatever realtors are currently doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said it perfectly. You can just talk about the things that you're currently seeing in your market or in your business. It doesn't have to be crazy. And realtors know this. Anytime you tell somebody that you're a realtor, or somebody asks you what you do and you say you're in real estate or whatever, the first question is always, oh, what's the market like? Or, oh, should I sell my house or whatever? And so I think that everybody's interested in real estate in one way or another at some point in their life, whether it's not right now or yesterday. It's always an easy topic of conversation if you make it easy. Don't make it weird. And podcasting helps. And also too, you want to work with your tribe, your people. And if they've heard you on a podcast, they've already identified you as their people. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that they're for you too, but it's probably likely that they are if they have connected with you in that way. So that's a huge part of business too. Then you don't have to fire
clients. Realtors hate doing that, but know they should. Don't do it enough. So
Yeah.
there's that. So Kevin, what do you see in like the lending side, like as far as podcasting and things like that? Is that, because I don't get too much into the lending side. I have lending, people that I know in lending and all that good stuff. But are you seeing that in a organic kind of way?
Yeah, so if you're asking if I see a lot of people using podcasts to grow their business, in the lending industry, if that's the question, the
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
would be no, I don't.
Really?
I think that's a big untapped market for any loan officers out there. You want to explode your business, you need to start a podcast that interviews realtors and insurance agents and divorce attorneys, because most of those people are not going to want to take the time out of their day to talk to you. But if you say, hey, will you come chat with me on my podcast for 20 minutes, you know, the chances are a lot more likely. And then you can actually get into a good conversation, build that relationship, and follow up in the future. So yeah, for any loan officers out there listening, it's a big untapped opportunity for sure.
Yeah. And really, Tracy, like that's our goal. So a few months ago, we did a cool little summit, me, Kevin, and our other two partners. And we're like, all right, like, who are we going to be to to a tribe of people? Like, you just used the word tribe, because what we've been doing, it's been working well, but we've kind of been casting this broad net and saying, hey, come one, come all. But oftentimes
Yeah.
that's not the most effective go-to-market strategy, right? And so
Right.
we started noticing all these little things in our business. Like 70% of our current book of business are real estate investors or commercial investors or people like that have something to do with real estate. And then a whole host of other things happen. We all have real estate in common. And we're like, you know what? Why don't we just go all in and try to serve this sort of narrow group, like this narrow market, this umbrella of real estate? Because to Kevin's point, I think so many people are doing themselves a disservice relative to being able to grow their business to the next level, because they don't really understand how this tool could be literally a perfect fit for them. Like, you are an anomaly. You are an early adopter. And I think a lot of people are like on the further end of the bell curve, like they're laggards and late adopters, because they quite simply haven't awoken to the opportunity behind using podcasting. So our goal 2021 and going further in the future is to just evangelize and educate the lenders, the realtors, the real estate professionals, the plumbers even, about why they should be doing this, why they should be looking to either be featured on podcasts like yours or starting ones of their own in order to get the word out there in, a less intrusive, less salesy type of a way.
Yeah. And, to speak to both of your points about content, we're already talking right now. I think we've done 30 episodes, but that's with the mini bites. But we're now talking about recycling some of that content and how can we go back and be like, in a fun way, hey, we're going back to the first podcast and like build that up and like, and just figuring out ways of using that content as well that we've already done. And how can we market that and get podcasts listened to again? What's kind of your experience with that? Because I'm not a huge podcaster. I don't listen to them all the time, but I know that if somebody has just come onto the scene for me or was recommended, you go to their first podcast, so you don't really think about that. So what's kind of your advice or your strategy on that?
Yeah. So congrats on 30. One of the things that we see people do that works pretty well when they hit some of these milestones is they'll do mashup episodes. So we can do like a little sound bite of a piece of information that really hit home way back when on episode 1, right?
Yeah.
And splice that in with something from episode 12 and episode 28. And then in the show notes, write up a really detailed description of how people can get more by going back to the first episode. We're actually getting ready to roll out video services. We're actually already doing this for like a select few clients and more of like a beta type of rollout. But very soon we're going to have video, so we can take the video that, you probably recorded, like you're recording this one right now, but you didn't release back from episode 1, and completely customize it to your theme, to your brand, and then help you get that out on your website or on YouTube, right? Just to try to give people the same content packaged in a different way. And
That's so cool.
and that's the great thing, right? Like all we're doing here is creating content. And the beautiful thing is it gets deposited in a bank and you can withdraw from it in the form of just repurposing it and making it look a little different.
Yeah.
Audiograms are coming from us very soon here, where it'll give you a cool 30-second audio overlaid on a static image or on a video like this. And you can post that to Instagram or LinkedIn. And all of a sudden people see it, they hear just a little clip that hooks them.
Yep.
And they're more inclined to go back to the actual episode and engage with the full length thing. So those are a couple of ideas that just come to top of mind.
That's awesome.
I could go on, but yeah, those have been very effective.
The word audiogram. I just saw that on somebody's Instagram last week. I was like, because Ella and I was like, I want those cute little social media where the little bars are moving and the people are talking in like a clip. Like, how do we do that? She's like, okay, we'll get it figured out. And then somebody was like, they're called audiograms. I'm like, what? I mean, it's such a fast moving. Yes, we want some of those. We got you.
We got you. Awesome. I tell you what, we'll do one for this episode. How about that? Just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea as to how it actually works, what it looks like.
That would be awesome. That'd be very cool. Okay, so like I was saying before, let's wrap this up in a pretty little bow because you guys have Podboxx that's coming out that I wish I would have known about when we were first doing the podcast. And I'm going to let you guys talk about what Podboxx is and then kind of tell everyone what our experience was with trying to get launched and off the ground. And I would say that 70% of what took us so long to get going was all of this stuff that you're getting ready to tell us about in Podboxx. I'm like, yes, that is it. Because I was telling you guys, I think you asked for feedback or something. I was like, it would have been really great to have this. You're all, well, so we have something coming out. So tell us about Podboxx, what it is and why and what's in there.
I'll let Kevin take this. Again, he is the brainchild behind a lot of what we do. So he dreamed this one up and I don't want to take the credit. Kev.
Yeah. So Karl actually called me one day and he was like, you know what? And for reference, Karl handles like 99.9% of our sales calls. And he was like, I just keep running into people that, really, really want to start a podcast. They just don't know where to start. And to be honest with you, I don't really know where to send them because, we've got several options, but what's the best, so on and so forth.
And you're sending them 10 different directions.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means it's never going to get done.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want a one-stop shop. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so we really kind of put on our thinking cap here and we were like, okay, so obviously we got to give them everything they need in one place. We'll call it a box, Podboxx. So basically what you're looking at here is all of the physical tech that you're going to need. And by the way, I'm actually using the microphone that comes with it right now. So
nice.
If you're wondering what the quality sounds like, that's
there
it.
You go.
I'm using the headphones. It's got a nice boom arm that you can clamp onto your desk, all the cables, plugs and play with Mac or Windows. So we just kind of take away that, which microphone should I buy? What kind of headphones? All that good stuff. So we've got all the physical tech. Next up, we give you all the knowledge you need in a book that we call The Easiest Way to Start a Podcast. It's roughly about 50 pages, and it's everything that you need to know and nothing that you don't need to know.
Right.
Basically, you can read it on an airplane ride, and hopefully by the time you're done with that book, you should have all the information that you need to go out there and start recording your podcast. In addition, we're going to give you all of the digital services that you need to show up like a professional. So that's going to be your cover art. We provide professionally designed Photoshop cover art with all the source files. We also provide a custom intro and outro with the copyright rights. That way you don't get sued if you blow up to Joe Rogan status, right?
Yep.
And then in addition, we also set up your hosting platform through Libsyn Pro. With Libsyn Pro, we actually get a few features that you can't get if you were to just go to Libsyn and sign up for their normal hosting service. For example, we'll be able to set you up a mobile application for your podcast. We'll be able to do dynamic ad insertion and quite a few other really, really cool things. And then to wrap it all up, we're also going to be providing 30 days of post-production, our proven post-production that we've been doing for the past year or so for free. And so you're going to get all of this stuff at $497. And if you're familiar with the market, that's
A steal.
it's a phenomenal offer. And the whole goal is just to lower that barrier to entry as much as possible. That way we can help as many people make sure their message gets heard and get out of the audience seat and into the seat of the host.
Yeah. It's so awesome. Like I said, I wish that we had that when we started. Because really, we were just kind of all over the place. It was all foreign to me. And I was like, again, I wasn't a podcast listener. I didn't really know how any of this worked. And so we got really hung up on the microphones because we were going to do them in person. I have a really small office in the store, and I took half of it to be a podcast area. So I had the chairs, I got the sound things that were hanging from my wall and the carpet. And then the microphones were the hardest part to figure out. High quality, the Zoom recorder thingy that I needed, and then we got all this set up. I think I got maybe 2 or 3 in, and then COVID hit. So we had to pivot again and I had to figure out what microphone I needed that would go into my computer and figure out how Zoom worked and all of that stuff. So for you guys to be there and available for the question to get answered and quickly, your customer service is fantastic. That just keeps the ball rolling because it's about momentum. You're psyched, you're pumped, and then you hit a wall and you're 2 months later, I should probably pick that back up. And you kind of lost, the excitement. So I think that again, you guys feel like you're just a part of our team. And I think that that's really important for people to realize, is that it is a relationship. We don't think of it as just a customer, and all of this has come out of it as well. And so that's benefited both of us. It's a win-win.
And with the Podboxx, we really want to make sure that we over-deliver for our customers, and we want to make sure that we help them have as successful of a podcast launch as they possibly can.
Yeah.
So with that being said, for the first 100 people that purchase a Podboxx, they're actually going to get access to a private Facebook group.
Nice.
We're calling it the Founders Circle, to where we'll be actively interacting, on a daily and weekly basis. We'll be there to answer any questions that you have while you're starting that podcast. And then we'll also be holding, live calls where we'll be doing question and answer, that kind of stuff.
I love that.
So we'll definitely be there on the support side. This is not a get rich quick scheme or a cash play. We genuinely want to help people, win more deals with a podcast.
Yeah, it's a community. You guys have built a community that has been probably needed for a long time. I'm sure there's other things or whatever, but you guys have built it the way that you operate and who you are as human beings. And I think that's the coolest part about all of it. You guys really care.
Yeah, no, we really do, because people can really crush it with a podcast.
Yes.
You really can.
It does that. It just gets you so excited. It's the same for us. Somebody will buy a $25 hat and they'll send us a picture and a story. Somebody stopped me in the grocery store and wants to, and I get so excited about that. They only spent $25 with us, but that's what it's about. And that's, your blood, sweat, and tears for all these years. That's exactly what it comes down to. It's the little things for sure. Okay. So before we close, I want to say, real quickly with the Podboxx, I had a question. Before they do that, before they get the Podboxx, what do they need to have? Do they need to have their name of their podcast ready? Or do you guys help with, what do you I want to do a podcast. What should I have already?
You need to be ready to win more deals.
Okay.
That's what you need to have.
Get ready to talk.
Literally, that book that Kevin referenced, The Easiest Way to Start a Podcast, that's our collective knowledge that we spent tens of thousands of dollars for, right?
Nice.
As I mentioned, we all met at this high ticket mastermind thing, and we've essentially synthesized it down to exactly what you need to know. And the cool thing about it too is that it comes with a digital workbook. So as you're learning about, like, let's say the 4 elements you need to have in your intro in order to make it very effective and strong, it's going to work you through crafting that out in the workbook.
Nice.
And all that comes to our back end. We put that together. We set it off to the team that can do the voiceovers and the sound and the whole thing. And it's just done for you. So
that is so cool.
You just, Kevin said it perfectly. Come ready to win more deals.
Yeah.
And just knowing that you got something positive to share. If you got something positive to share, I promise you the content piece will take care of itself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we hit the nail on the head on that earlier. And we're going to be providing some templates about how people can structure like the first 10 or so, just because they're probably a little nervous. They haven't really found their voice yet. We'll give them some templates just to help them with the flow and the cadence of the show too.
Yeah. And I'll say just a little bit of advice. When we started ours, my first 2 or 3 were friends of mine in the business. So I was like, it's just an easy conversation to have. Yeah. And both of them, I was like, you need to have a podcast. And it was just so much fun. And you also, that imposter syndrome, you're like, oh, who's going to listen to this? Nobody wants to hear us talk. But that's not true. People totally, especially realtors, want to hear what other realtors are doing. You know, you take little bits and pieces from each other, and that's that relationship and that community.
I mean, think about it this way. As a realtor, if you had the opportunity to every day talk to 25 people that could use your service,
right?
How awesome would that be? And how quickly could you blow up your business?
Yeah.
Pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And podcasting gives you the ability to do that, even if, you know, you're a quote unquote nobody. Anybody can go out there and get 25 downloads.
Yeah.
You know, and that's big in these kind of spaces.
It is.
And it's niche, and those 25 people listen to that 45 minutes of you talking in their ear and gaining their trust and rapport.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of things that we didn't even talk about today that just makes podcasting so powerful.
It does. Yeah. We only get, I say only, but we get probably 100 right off the bat. We get about 100 listeners, you know, right when we launch it, because we put it everywhere. But we have so much content too that, you know, podcasting is just one of many things that we do. But if you're not doing a lot of stuff and you focus all your marketing energy, you know, or even half, you know, you go do pop buys and then you do a podcast. You could even do a podcast about your pop buys that day. I mean, whatever. But it's not about the numbers for us. For me, it's about people coming back to us and saying, because I have a small real estate brokerage as well. And I don't cross the two a whole lot. Like I don't, with all things real estate, because people had a hard time separating the two. They're like, well, why would I buy products from a local real estate company? And like, it's a totally separate company. It's just the same person. But I had one of my realtors listen to my podcast. She was like, oh my gosh, she completely added like structure to her business and is like adding some team members, and she had been wanting to do it forever but didn't know how. And the last 2 people that we had just had on both talked about how they did it for themselves, and it changed. She's like, I am so inspired and changed my business. So that's what it's about.
Yes.
It's what it's about.
Yes.
So
100%.
I love it. Okay, so where can people find you guys? And give me the websites. And well, the Podboxx, is that on Streamlined?
Yeah, so streamlinedpodcasts.com. That's the main website. You can check out all the information there. But just for your listeners, we'll make sure there's a link in the show notes that if they go to that, Karl, what is that going to show them?
Yeah, it's going to give them a quick little webinar that'll help them kind of get their mindset right around how podcasting can help them win more deals. We find that so much of making the decision to commit to starting is just a couple of mindset shifts. So in a quick little video, I walk them through 3 secrets that once they understand, they're going to be so excited to get going on this. So that's where it'll take them. And then we'll have a special offer for them there if they'd like to get going with the Podboxx, and we can go from there.
That's so cool. And that's your thing, sales.
Yeah.
Both of you guys. Medical supplies and vacuums, I guess. Houses, loans, same thing.
Pushing product, girl. Pushing
Yeah,
product.
exactly.
Yep.
I do this every time I close out and then I forget. And I have one more thing. Do you guys have like the sharing links? You know how people this drives me batty, and we've been doing this for a while, but like platforms on where people listen, some people like have their, whether it's Apple or I don't know, I can't think of all the ones, Steam, but I don't know. But how do people usually listen? Do they listen to it directly in the hosting? And do we need to send out all of the links, like in case somebody listens on one platform over the other, to give them? Because I'm seeing this now, these little sharing icons or whatever. Is that necessary?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to be, you want to meet your audience where they are, right? You don't want to expect them all to be on iTunes if 25% of them are on Droid. So
yeah,
the main ones that you should be set up with, and if not, we can help you with this, is definitely iTunes. Spotify is a big one now. Google Play for the Android folks. And then I'd probably say Stitcher is another big one where people like go to listen to podcasts a lot, in addition to your website. So we can make sure that all those links are put into the right place. When you receive the emails from us letting you know that the episode is live, we should be providing that to you as well too, but I'd have to double check on that.
Yeah, I think we get those for sure. But there's like, I think we signed up for like Chartable or something that gives you, like, it shows all the icons at the bottom so that people can just click on. But I don't know if I just wasn't sure if that was necessary, or if we're missing a part that, people aren't listening because that's not accessible or whatever.
Yeah, so what Karl said is absolute great point. And by the way, I don't think there's really a right or a wrong answer here.
Yeah.
Thanks. You're just trying to make me feel better.
Well, at the end of the day, if we're really being honest, the majority of podcast listeners are on iTunes.
Yeah. Okay.
And you also, at the end of the day, really want to send the majority of your traffic to iTunes, because that's where all the reviews live. That's what gives you the credibility. So
good point.
My personal opinion, I always try to shoot everything to iTunes, because again, credibility, that's where everyone is. But there's a lot of really successful people that put all 10 links in every single post.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think there's really a right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of doing it.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better, because I don't know if we're doing it right or wrong, and we're just, going on.
I think a good idea, Tracy, would be, so definitely link them to iTunes, like what Kevin said. But also, are you guys publishing this on your website?
Yeah.
somewhere?
So this is another thing. We did not, for a long time, we thought that the podcast needed to live on, we're on Podbean, needed to live there, and we should just share, for ease sake for the listener, we should share everything from there. And I don't know, I just got an idea. I was like, shouldn't we be sending them to our website to like listen to this and SEO?
Yes.
Yeah.
Send them to the website.
Everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then that's where you can also put all the different icons, like somewhere on the podcast link. Yeah, you can show them all the different places where Podbean is distributing to.
Okay.
And then you can say subscribe, in order to get the automatic alerts for wherever it is that they like to listen. So if it's iTunes or Spotify, they can choose, like they'll know where they like to listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
They'll go find the podcast there, they'll subscribe, and that directory will give them pings whenever things are live. So I would suggest that. I think that could be helpful.
And the SEO is the real winner of why you should put your podcast on your website.
Yeah.
Especially if we're doing the show notes, because you're getting quite a substantial amount of written content each and every time you put out a podcast.
Yeah. And that's where we were like, because when we were putting it out, I can't remember, but the show notes are really long, and we don't want to cut them out, or thin them out, I guess. But on Podbean, the player, the little play button was at the bottom of the show notes. So they would have to scroll. We needed it to be at the top, but Podbean didn't do that. So we wanted to control that ourselves. That was another reason why we put it on the website, but we needed that player to be at the very top. But what we did was our first idea was we'll just tell them to go to the website for the show notes and just do a summary on Podbean, and then they'd have to go. But then we were like, that's not going to send enough people to the site. not everybody reads the show notes. So yeah, I think we have it figured out now. So yes, the website, that's great advice, because we've been doing it backwards it doesn't hurt us, but that was a piece that we could have been utilizing that we weren't. So
yeah.
thanks, team.
It's all an evolution. Hey, this was a lot of fun. You're a really good host.
Thanks. I love it. It's been so much fun.
Super
I
fun
love to talk
conversation.
too. So that's another natural reason for having a podcast. All right, you guys, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Let us know if you want to do some sort of a giveaway or anything like that. Whenever it gets closer to time, we can figure something out.
Yeah, no, we're totally going to do that. So
cool.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Have a good one.